Hello everyone, I'm Jhanna and I'm talking to my best friend Edel today. And we're
Hello.
not doing the video together because I've come back to my place after, I don't know, 5 months. Um, so today's topic is consent. And the reason why Chaplin is in the frame is because I got this idea from Chaplin. Yeah, Sir Chaplin Hanson. So there was an incident a few months ago when Chaplin was sitting next to me, and I had put my hairband on the floor next to him, and he kept eyeing it the whole time, and he didn't take it until I gave him permission to take it. And this got me thinking about consent because if a tiny puppy can wait for permission, it should come more easily to us as human beings, I think. But
You would think, yes.
it's a very, very obvious topic. And Edel and I were just talking about this before we began recording the video. Um, that is supposed to be obvious to all of us, right? Consent is just something that should be obvious, but it's not for the most part with a lot of people. So we decided that this would be a good topic to talk about, and Chaplin can make an appearance. so, so that's the reason why I decided to pick the topic today. So, Edel, since it's a very obvious topic, I know it's going to be a little, odd
It
talking
is
about it.
difficult simply because it's that obvious to us, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah. So, what is your understanding of consent?
In the medical field, before I examine every patient, I have to explain to them exactly what to look forward to. Even if it is a simple procedure like my placing my stethoscopes diaphragm on their chest to listen to their heart or their breath sounds, I let them know that I'm going to be placing it. I show it on my point it on my body, and then I tell them that's where I'm going to place it, so that my patients will know that if I made one move that I hadn't explained prior to doing the procedure, I was taking a liberty that they had not given verbal consent to. And then the next form of consent is when I examine a child, especially a minor. I expect to have an adult present in the room, preferably a parent. And I've only ever had examined minors with their parents present, actually. So, but technically, with their legal guardian present in the room. And if I am supposed to examine a woman without her clothes on, or a man that I have to examine without his clothes on, I prefer to have a nurse of the same gender as my patient present in the consultation room, and then explain again in a lucid and clear way. It's not a matter of getting it done, but the fact is the patient has to understand. And sometimes when we are doing per vaginal or per rectal examinations for our patients, I tell them exactly what they would feel and how they can make themselves feel more comfortable. And it is not, consent is not just about getting permission, but it is about giving the um, the power to the person on the receiving end of the treatment of that which I'm asking consent for. They have the right, the ball is in their court, and they can decide to not give me permission to not do a lot of things, and that is perfectly okay as well. In which case, the other caveat of consent is that I cannot push for what I think is good in that situation to do. There may be patients who think that, oh, I don't want this examination done on me, in which case I can explain the ramifications of um, if you don't do, this is what we may not be able to understand as a result. If you do it, this is the advantages, the disadvantages, and then leave it be. Consent has a little bit of corollaries attached to it. The number one, when I ask for permission, the it is up to the person to give me yes or no. So the power lies with the person I ask the consent from. And the second one is I do not have the right to push for my agenda. I don't ask consent in order to um, make life easy for me, or sort it out for me, or I've done that and I've done everything that a doctor is supposed to do. But the consent is about participation. So the patient does not become this reduced element in a scenario where the doctor has all the information, but an equal participant in the learning of, in the investigation of, and in the treatment of whatever they've come to me with. So that is in the medical scenario. But I think in the social scenario, this is very easily transferable, especially to sexual encounters with people, and how consent there plays the most important role. And it is usually slides into a very easy gray zone simply because of lack of sex education, low self-esteem, this need to project an image of always having only good things happen, things like that, and victims and the fear of victim shaming. So a lot of people not really genuinely telling what went on with them. So the learning curve in consent culture for sexual encounters is very poor, I have to say. And then there is also the consent culture when it comes to um, um, friendships. What are the boundaries for parents and children? What are the boundaries in friendships? Sometimes you have to even think, what are the boundaries, contracts in your workplace? So consent is very, very large, and I'm very good at consent in the professional arena. I'm getting better in the friendships and in my relative circle. I was very, very bad about it in my romantic relationships. Hopefully, I'll get better at it. What is your experience, Janna, with the consent culture?
I think you pretty much covered it, and I have nothing left to say.
So sorry.
um,
This is what happens when
so
you prepare for a topic.
yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, adding on to what you said about consent in general, consent is not a one-time thing. You need to ask for consent every single time. Again, it depends on what relationship you have with a person, your friend or your romantic relationship. There are certain things that we somehow seem to take for granted, but I think, again, it's a very, very situation-based thing, but I think consent is something that you have to work with every single time. It's
Yes.
not like, okay, say for example, somebody wants to take my car out for a drive and they say, okay, can I please borrow your car? I need it. One thing is, okay, you take the car out and you come back, but this can't be like a weekly thing. Just because I said okay today does not mean the next time you ask me, I'm going to be okay with that. So small things can, if you're watching television and somebody's in the room and they want the volume to be reduced on the television, it's not like you directly just, reduce the volume. You ask the other person if that's okay. So these are very small things that somehow we just overlook and think it's not a big deal. But these are the things that either make or break a relationship in the long run. And even if you choose to stay with somebody who's been violating your boundaries by not asking you for consent, you choose to stay with the person, you will probably have a really uncomfortable, unhealthy relationship, which will just sort of build and build and build over a period of time. And then it just either implodes or you live with each other, resenting each other for all of your life. So consent is as small as chaplain waiting for permission to ask for a rubber band, or it can be as huge as making life-changing decisions. And I have been exposed to, of course, I haven't been great with consent in a lot of areas, and I'm getting a little better at it now because I didn't know any better before. But I've also seen people in other relationships where somebody just decides to buy a car without talking to his wife, decides to buy a house without talking to, their significant other. And these are huge, huge decisions. How do
Who
you
do
take these
you know? Oh
decisions?
my God, who bought a car and a house without telling the wife? Jesus.
I know
Okay.
about the car. The house is again an example I'm giving because there are people
Ah,
who do
okay.
that, right?
Okay, yeah.
And things like if you were to do something for somebody, whatever you think it's a good thing, but that person feels uncomfortable about it. A lot of times, because a lot of us don't understand what is okay, what is not okay. We don't understand our own boundaries. We just sort of go along with it because we don't want to upset the other person.
Yes.
So, but yes, the car incident did happen with someone that I knew.
You know
Yeah.
some interesting. How dare you have other friends? How dare you not take my consent? You don't have my consent to have other friends, Janna. But from what
So,
you said so far, Jadna, it is
mm,
right. Like you said, consent, you cannot just, consent is not a yes or no situation. It is
mm,
a conditional. If I ask to borrow as per your first example, if I ask to borrow your car and you say okay, and it's okay for now. So,
mm,
what is stopping us from when people ask us for permission or
mm,
asking us to establish in their own minds what our conditions are? If we don't know what our boundaries are,
yeah.
I think I should learn. As you were talking, I was just understanding that I am complicit in providing a gray zone for many people as well. When they ask me, I don't say it's okay for now, but the
Mm,
next time you feel the need to borrow this, I need for you to ask me again. I
yeah.
don't establish that. And people, we should train people in how to treat us, right?
Mm, mm,
We're not Cocker Spaniel versus Dalmatians that, oh, this breed requires that, that breed requires that. We're not like that. So I think
the best breed is Chaplin and Coco.
Coco, she's laying down now next to me, right? So so it's not that kind of a blanket prejudice over people is something that we need to. I think the onus of establishing a consent culture starts with a person who's recognized the importance of consent, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because there have been times I've been sitting with, friends and other people, and if some of the things are lying around and I want to sit down and I don't have space there, I ask them, can I please move your bag, or would you mind moving your bag so I can sit down? And they just say, oh, it's okay, just move it by yourself. You don't have to ask. And for me, it's a big deal because if somebody moved my stuff without asking me, I would be upset. And this made me realize that not everybody gives importance to consent. It can be as small as, putting something on the table or moving the bag. It's so, like the areas where consent can sort of spread to is literally everywhere. But because we come from maybe a culture or a family background that doesn't think it's important and they just say, oh, this is how it's done. Just because this is how it's done, it doesn't mean it's okay or doesn't make it right. But a lot of people think that if there is a common consensus that something is done a certain way, it's okay or it's right to do it like that. And if you are that one person who chooses to not indulge in that kind of behavior, you find a lot of people going against you. So even working with consent is something that, of course, it starts with us, but it's also being brave enough to be that one person who may have a lot of people against him or her. So it's not something that you can just, I don't know, I think it's extremely important. And talking about, I mean, this topic is so obvious. But I think it starts with you. If you don't choose to make a change or you don't recognize the importance of consent, it's very difficult for it to get diluted and not take it seriously. It's a very, very real possibility.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. And I think
Yeah.
most of us just depend on put way too much pressure on common sense, on good manners, on friendship to establish a culture of consent. No, some people require a little bit more. Call
Yeah.
us high maintenance, maybe, but I think we've just developed where we take good manners, friendship, and common sense for granted. And on top of that, there are lots of people who require, and the both of us are a great example of that, require a culture of
Yeah.
consent
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
constant consent asking so that we can redefine the parameters because there may be a friend I'm okay for her to do certain things, whereas I may have another friend who I'm not okay for him or her to do the same thing. So
Yeah.
my consent is extremely subjective,
Mm.
and it depends on my mood because it's my consent. And
Yeah.
this is very, very close to. You've already done a video on boundaries, haven't you, Jagna?
No, I haven't.
No, you
Not.
haven't. It's okay. It's coming along then.
Yeah.
So be sure to watch that as well. So yes. So yes, I think consent is like consent is not the same as friendship, companionship, familiarity, common sense, politeness. No, consent is a
Mm.
whole different other subject, and it
Yeah.
is a brand new language that many of us have to learn and not just assume.
Yeah.
Consent is not assumption. Consent is very, very definite verbal agreement. Yes.
And also, I've noticed that in professional relationships, we have a better understanding of what consent is. But when it comes to personal relationships, like I said, we take things for granted. So the gray area in personal relationships is a lot more. So I think that is where we need to really give a little bit more thought and work on the relationships, because if you don't have a good
Yes.
personal relationship with somebody, I mean, what's the point? I
Yes.
mean, you're here because relationships are what help you grow as a person, right? And there's good, there's bad. I mean, it's everything is a part of your personal relationship. And you want to give consent that importance that it does not continue staying in the gray area. You want
Yes.
it to come out in the open and you want to make sure that you have a good relationship. Otherwise, we're just going to keep propagating unhealthy dynamics in our family, and then it's how much time is it going to take to extend to the society at large. So yeah, so this is my little bit of understanding of consent, and I'm so happy Jacqueline came to the video. Can you show Coco? She's also a very good example of consent because she always waits for you to
To
move
pet
away from
her,
her
isn't
food.
it? Yes, from her spot before she takes her spot. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, she
Hi,
was.
Coco.
Yeah, she's sleeping, so she's got a
Oh,
sleepy, long sleepy fish. Oh, sleep, sleep, sleep. Okay.
did she give you consent to wake her up?
I just grabbed her. I'll do anything for internet notoriety.
All right. So thank you so much for joining me,
Thank you
and
for having me.
we will see all of you next week with another interesting topic. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to give us in terms of feedback, please drop a message. And if you like the video, click like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, and bye bye.